Hello, everyone. We're so excited to see you this afternoon and to have so many of you joining us for our Partnering for Success webinar. We're thrilled to continue to host this webinar series with our partners and state education leaders. I'm Sarah Glover, a director at Education Commission of the States.
And hello, I'm Jeremy Anderson, president of Education Commission of the States. We are your hosts today. Partnering for Success is designed to provide each of you with opportunities for connection with peers, researchers, and innovators who are providing solutions to some of today's most pressing education policy issues. It is always our goal that you leave these webinars filled with insight, inspiration, and resources that help you more effectively address the challenges you're facing in your states.
Today, we have two education leaders joining us to examine how teacher apprenticeship models are a strategic pathway that states can use to build a strong teacher workforce. You are encouraged to place your questions in the provided Q&A chat for today's session. Today's session will be recorded, so we ask that each of you remain muted, and if you prefer, with video off. For optimal viewing, we suggest you take a moment to change your view settings to speaker view.
Before we invite Dr. DeMoss and Dr. Schwinn to begin, I want to take a moment to thank all of our partners for their collaboration and support in this work. We are pleased to be able to partner with the Bank Street College of Education and the Tennessee Department of Education for this conversation today, and we are grateful to all of our partners who provide year-long support to Education Commission of the States. To start us off, I'm super excited to have Sarah talk about the trends we are seeing in state policy around teacher retention and apprenticeships. As director, Sarah Glover leads policy staff and projects and is passionate about inspiring and supporting the growth and development of individuals, teams, and our organization. Sarah has over 18 years of experience in the field of education, including as a national board certified teacher. We're excited to have Sarah lead today's conversation. Sarah, the virtual podium is all yours.
Thank you, Jeremy. Healthy teacher pipelines rely on well-prepared teachers who provide high-quality educational experiences for students and who are retained in the profession. However, we know that many U.S. schools experience staffing challenges and often struggle to fill vacant positions. While national headlines suggest we are facing a widespread national teacher shortage, research consistently points to a more nuanced problem, an uneven teacher labor market resulting in teacher shortages. Shortages are specific and persistent. The most consistent challenges facing schools are shortages in certain subjects, such as upper-level math and special education, and in certain schools, including historically under-resourced schools and in rural communities. When examining the demographic makeup of classroom teachers in the U.S., we see that the diversity of the teacher workforce does not match our nation's increasingly diverse student population. Shortages can also result from decreased numbers of teachers who have received high-quality preparation, including the opportunity to engage in supported, intentional, and hands-on classroom teaching experiences. Additionally, there's some evidence to suggest that shortages are increasingly widespread, as the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic may have decreased interest in the field and accelerated teacher turnover. Tackling teacher shortages takes a coherent strategy and support for teachers across the many stages of the pipeline. States are looking to apprenticeships as one mechanism to provide on-the-job and in-the-classroom experience while building strategic pathways to develop a strong teacher workforce.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I'm excited to help introduce our first national expert, Dr. Karen DeMoss, who is currently the Executive Director of Prepared to Teach at the Bank Street College of Education. Karen, the virtual podium is all yours.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. It's an honor to be here during this exciting time for teacher preparation, and it is great to have this opportunity for us to come together, share, and learn from each other. I can hardly wait for the next presentation. Today, I'll be drawing on some of the lessons from across our national network to tease out linkages between apprenticeships and teacher residencies with an eye towards implications for state-level apprenticeship design and policy. So first, let's look at the key similarities between teacher residencies and apprenticeships. Both include sustained applied learning before someone's licensed to practice. Both require significant intentionally designed supervision. Both include collaborative designs to meet the needs of all stakeholders. And both include coursework that supports the clinical learning. Where they differ is that residencies, if they're paid, are usually funded through short-term grants that are unsustainable. Apprenticeships, though, are sustainably funded by employers. Bringing residencies and apprenticeships together into what I'll call teacher residency apprenticeships can help address a core need in teacher preparation, funding so that aspiring teachers can afford to learn to teach. Moving towards more universal teacher residency apprenticeships would help states meet their educational goals. Residency prepared teachers stay employed in their schools and districts at much higher rates than graduates from other clinical practice models. Studies of residencies regularly find that 90% of graduates are still employed in the same school in their third year. In addition, over 80% are still in their districts in their fifth year. These are exceptional retention rates. And residency graduates are twice as likely to come from diverse backgrounds and look like the students that they serve. Both retention and diversity matter for students. When teachers stay in the profession, their efficacy at supporting achievement, motivation, and attendance grows, and their disciplinary referrals decrease. When the teaching staff is more diverse, all students benefit, and the same race students benefit profoundly. Having a single Black teacher in elementary school predicts a 13% increase in a Black student's enrollment in college. Intentional supported clinical practice is important because teaching is complex. Unlike in other clinical fields where the intern focuses on one person at a time and a supervisor can check work while the patients or customers wait, in teaching, there's a whole classroom of students and everything happens simultaneously. Research on the science of learning and development has begun to shed light on the complex set of knowledge and skills teachers need before they take over a classroom. In addition to content knowledge and a range of pedagogies, teachers need to know how to support unique developmental needs of individual students, foster strong relationships, connect learning to life experiences, activate social, emotional, and academic brain functions, and mitigate impacts of adversity on learning. Mastering such complex skill sets requires time and strong mentored clinical placements with aligned coursework. Fortunately, the time it takes that aspiring teachers need in their clinical placements can also address schools' instructional and human resource needs. For example, today, some of the benefits of teacher residency apprenticeships can happen immediately. When designed using co-teaching approaches, because you have 2 adults in the classroom, instruction improves. And many successful residencies have found ways to integrate residents into paid school-based instructional roles. For example, residents may substitute teach, tutor, or serve in paraprofessional roles for half of their clinical placements. Of course, upon graduation, they can be hired as teachers. In the near term, within a year in many communities, it's possible to grow the pool of strong new teachers through teacher residency apprenticeships. By recruiting through and investing in community members working in youth services and paraprofessionals who hold bachelor's degrees, teacher residency apprenticeship graduates can become teachers in just a year with salary increases that offer a strong return on investment for their efforts. In the longer term, an integrated system from pre-apprenticeship opportunities in high school through paraprofessional apprenticeships and on to teacher residency apprenticeships can build a strong grow your own pipeline and strengthen opportunities for other career changers. So as states consider developing teacher residency apprenticeships, what might they want to keep in mind? From our work across the country, we've surfaced several key design principles for consideration. Be sure to frame the initiative as one that both addresses staffing needs and supports broader school improvement goals. Schools exist to support positive student outcomes, and teacher residency apprenticeships can accomplish that goal. Tightly aligned related instruction and on-the-job training are critical to learning how to teach, so design systems to ensure deep partnerships between those two. As you start your initial work, engage key cross-sector participants and create ample space for broader involvement in the design of your policies and programs. Because grow your own models are more likely to attract teachers who want to stay in hard-to-staff, rural, urban, and lower-income communities, incentivize grow your own efforts when you have grant money. As much as possible, embrace long-term improvements for the system over short-term needs. And because living stipends for aspiring teachers are the only part of the ecosystem without an existing stable funding source, prioritize the work of creating permanent funding so candidates can learn to teach within your states. Finally, systems will benefit from policies and learning networks that promote quality and sustainability. And I'll speak a little bit more about that in another principle as particularly important in your early stages of the work. So the first principle is about your key players. Key players from K-12 systems, teacher preparation leaders from private, public, and non-traditional sectors, state workforce offices, and any collective bargaining and other teachers groups should all be part of your design conversations from what we have learned. We would also suggest that you consider building in additional processes that engage a broader set of stakeholders. For example, in districts, bring CFOs and school and district leaders from early childhood through high school to the table. For colleges, for IHEs, bring college financial aid leadership, undergraduate general education curriculum representatives. And in the broader world, bring your legislative staffers, equity officers, and community-based organizations. Hearing from such stakeholders early on will help ensure that the initiative can be smoothly implemented once different parts of the system engage these new opportunities, which are definitely cross-sector. We would also recommend considering establishing a state-supported learning network of teacher residency apprenticeships. Creating deep collaborative partnerships across systems is new to many organizations, so having a community of practice to share ideas will help ramp up your efforts and help local partnerships stay on track with quality implementation. As the network strengthens its work, our experience shows that both preparation programs and districts see how the partnership is meeting their goals and needs. They're then more eager to bring resources to the table to ensure the partnership is sustained. So how can states themselves promote sustainability? First, keep the instructional benefits of this work at the forefront. The public wants strong schools, and teacher residency apprenticeships help us get there. Strong preparation pathways bring positive outcomes, including improvements in motivation, attendance, achievement, graduation, school culture. Students thrive in these kinds of learning environments. Lots of undesirable measures decrease too. Turnover, dropout rates, remediation needs, inappropriate special education referrals. Given the important role of strong preparation in promoting positive outcomes in education, it's not a surprise that other nations that have improved their systems incorporated funded preparation into their P-12 systems like apprenticeships will allow. With a focus on the instructional benefits of teacher residency apprenticeships, states can then tap into a broad range of funding streams to create sustainable systems. Some resources will be budget neutral, such as incorporating roles like substitute teaching into teacher residency apprenticeships. As graduates are hired and stay, cost savings will accrue through reduced teacher turnover expenses, which are estimated to be between $10,000 and $20,000 per teacher. These dollars can be repurposed towards teacher residency apprenticeships. Rethinking budget priorities at district levels is also a way to invest, because you have strong instructional benefits of these preparation pathways, and they can also save money in reduced remediation, reduced grade retention, and inappropriate special education referrals. Braiding all of these resources together with other funds such as apprenticeship dollars, financial aid, loan forgiveness, COVID funding, all of these braided together can get you on your way towards sustainability. I hope some of those ideas were helpful, and I know my team is looking forward to hearing from Tennessee. Before I close, I'd be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to the dozens of partnerships across the nation whose work informs all that we've shared today. Thank you all, and back to you, Jeremy.
Thank you so much, Karen. And as I get ready to make my next introduction, I'd like to make sure to urge all of you, if you have questions around some of the policy that either Karen's talking about or that Dr. Penny Schwinn will be talking about from her experience in Tennessee, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom, and we will be monitoring that, trying to answer as many of those questions as we can. It is now my honor to introduce the Tennessee Commissioner of Education, Dr. Penny Schwinn. Dr. Schwen has been leading Tennessee education policy since her appointment in early 2019 and comes from a long family of educators. She herself has served as a Chief Deputy Commissioner of Academics for the state of Texas, as an assistant superintendent, a school principal, and even an elected school board member. Commissioner Schwinn, the virtual podium is all yours.
Great, thank you so much, and happy to be here to talk about something that I would agree is one of the more important things that we can be doing across the country, and that's how do we get the best prepared teachers into classrooms in front of students each and every day. So in Tennessee, as we've been thinking about this work, on the next slide, you'll see where our priorities have been. And these are our strategic priorities that started before the pandemic. High quality academics for every student, no matter where they lived, making sure every student was ready to be successful once they graduated from high school, and making Tennessee the best place to become and remain a teacher. And our goal for that was to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. So the apprentice work has been really critical for us. When we thought about that in Tennessee, thinking about our educator shortages, on the next slide, you'll see that we had some critical areas. We do a vacancy analysis every year, and we've actually seen some stability even with the pandemic. That being said, we're also seeing stability in the areas with the greatest amount of shortage. And like many people, that is for ESL teachers, science, math, and special populations. That has continued to be and becomes more and more of an issue each and every year when we look at the number of teachers who exit and who are entering our educator programs. So when we look at the challenges as to why, we've spent the last year really studying what are those barriers to entry? Why aren't folks entering into the teaching profession? And how can we as a state agency help to solve some of those problems? The three things that we've identified in first and foremost is the cost. Becoming a teacher is really expensive, and we saw significant variance across the state, some programs being very affordable and a lot of programs being very unaffordable, especially for those who are first-time college goers, those who might have no experience moving into and through professions like teaching and others where you have to get certification after your four-year programs. We also saw that it was a bigger barrier to entry for those students who were low income and students of color. In our middle category, we also saw that most of our teachers, based on our annual teacher and educator survey, do not feel prepared for the realities of the classroom. On the first day, they are reporting that they need to have significant additional support for things that they felt like they should have known on day one. And we also saw that many of our districts communicated the same thing, needing to go through pre-programs over the summer to make sure that teachers had what they needed to be successful for students on the first day. And a lot of that is just the first year of teaching. Many of us have experienced those first few years of teaching, but there are other places where we found and saw that if new teachers had that very critical early mentorship, if they were able to study under mentor and master teachers before that first day in the classroom, they were going to feel and then become more successful for their students. And then third, in Tennessee, we've had a long-standing set of goals related to diversifying the profession. We really feel that a grow your own model helps us to more and better reflect the students that we serve across the state. So these are some of the challenges that we think our grow your own program certainly addresses. In terms of our early success and some of the early demonstrated success, we used our federal relief funds, and Tennessee took a different approach and said, we want to make sure we're using federal relief funds in a sustainable way. Yes, they are one-time funds, but we want to make sure to invest those funds in areas that are going to pay off forevermore, or at least in the moderate term future. So we had an initial $2 million in grants that moved us from one program in 2019 to 65 within a 2-year period. We were able to have the first round of Grow Your Own partnerships in 2019-20, and that was with a partnership at Clarksville Montgomery School District. And like I said, that then ballooned to 65 programs, even in a pandemic. And I think that reinforces just how critically important getting strong teachers in classrooms is for districts, whether they are urban, suburban, or rural. And we do that through 14 EPP or educator preparation programs in 63 different districts. And so we've really tried to broaden and expand those EPPs across the state that are involved. We're also seeing that they are starting to expand and balloon in the number of districts that they can serve. And that's been really exciting work. In terms of some of the things that we've seen in our Grow Your Own program and then moving to the apprenticeship model, we've started with that teaching as a profession in the high school. So 2+2 programs, a lot of early college credit for high school students. We have an innovative school model between two districts. They literally have high school students on a bus, and the bus is a classroom, and they'll go to different classrooms in elementary schools across the district and start to get that early work with younger learners and get real-time feedback as juniors and seniors in high school. We have also EPP innovation. We are starting to rethink through policy and legislation the expectations of our ed prep programs. One of the things that we are really dialed in on is that this can't and should not just be those who wish to participate. If we know what works, we have a responsibility as a state agency and as a country to reset expectations for what it means to become a teacher and what our EPPs are expected to do and provide for new teachers. So we've got a lot of our current EPPs who have bought into innovation grants. They're developing courses and content, and they're starting to reshape what that experience looks like. So we think that every teacher, no matter where you go to school, should be able to qualify to be an apprentice because it's just good practice. For Grow Your Own, like I said, we've got 65 programs, 650 future educators. And to give you a sense, in Tennessee, we have about 1,000 vacancies. So just in this first 3 years, we've really cut that number. In the future, it's going to take 2 to 3 years to get them through the program. But that number of vacancies gets cut in half just through these first 3 years. So as we really start to institutionalize this, create stability and consistency over time, we think this is going to be one of the biggest ways that we can start to close that vacancy gap and make sure that those teachers are better prepared in the future. And then we've got a lot of endorsements and networks. We'll be moving into apprenticeships for school leaders, we hope very soon, but it really is addressing a lot of the challenges that I spoke to earlier. So now thinking about the apprenticeship model, and Tennessee is very excited and very proud of being the first nationally recognized apprenticeship model for making teaching an apprenticeable profession, which I think we can all agree is a good and positive step forward. And as a quick overview for what that means, nationally, we were the first state to do that through the U.S. Department of Labor. Very grateful for the support of both Secretary Walsh and Cardona at the U.S. DOE. But we also made sure to leverage a lot of that federal funding, which I think was a really important, not just talking point, but collaborative effort with the federal government around saying, look, we see this issue as a result of the pandemic and before. You've given us these funds. How can we actually think about sustainable solutions that are replicable in the future? The role of the state, and we'll talk a little bit about that later, but we are really diving into monitoring and quality control. One of the biggest pieces of pushback that we've heard in the very beginning, and this is over a year ago, has been around kind of diluting the quality of the profession. And is this just a fast track to becoming a teacher? And I will say, as a teacher in a family of teachers, and frankly, as a public school parent, the last thing that I want is to dilute the profession of teaching. I actually think we need to do a much better job nationally of elevating the profession. I would contend that the apprenticeship model does that. It treats teachers like professionals. It gives them significantly better preparation. It pays them for work that they should not be volunteering to do. And it ensures that we are promoting the profession at earlier grades and giving more opportunities to more people who can be excellent teachers. So a little bit about kind of what the registered apprenticeship standards were and kind of how we thought about that. There were 5 steps. So one is employer involvement. The employer are the school districts. And so one of the things we've clarified a lot recently has been that every individual teacher is registered as an apprentice. Our role at the state is to make sure that that bar for the program that they will be participating in is high, that they will have really strong professional development, strong mentorship in the most critical areas, and a lot of technical assistance and support to be successful in their coursework and whatever praxis or praxis-like exam your state may require. 2 is that structured on-the-job training. I think, as you heard before, that is the core piece of what makes this more successful, and what we've seen is going to be more successful in some of the studies we've done on mentorship programs and similar programs. And that's making sure that we have folks who are working under our mentor or master teachers all day, and in our first inaugural program for 3 years before they step foot in a classroom. I like to say that we will not have first-year teachers again. All of our first-year teachers will be 3rd or 4th-year teachers because of how much experience they have. And imagine that, those of you out there who have been first-year teachers and know the students you served, and maybe if you're like me, have a little regret about that, and what you could have done. If I had been able to study under an exceptional teacher for 3 years before that first day, I know exactly how much better I would have been for my kids. And we think about that structured on the job training. And the other thing I would push on it that we get a lot of questions on is on pedagogy. And isn't it important for us to sit in a room and talk about pedagogy? And what I will say is I learn more from watching my mom, who is an exceptional teacher in the classroom, or Miss Brett, who is an exceptional teacher in the classroom, and studying their practice live with students, and then trying to do it myself and getting a lot of real-time feedback. That is what changed my instructional practice personally as a teacher. And I think the apprenticeship model helps to do that. For us, related instruction, that on-the-job training with the coursework happens in the evenings. It can be online or in person, depending on the college that you attend, but it does allow for people to have families, support their families, and certainly still sometimes finish their BAs, sometimes get their credential only, or certainly their master's in credential. And one of the things that I think is the most important for us here in Tennessee is that they are paid to do this work. Being a student teacher, if it's like anybody else, it was an unpaid commitment that you make, but you are doing work in classrooms. And so having a way to progress your income over a 2 to 3 year period, because each year you make a little more than the year before, you get more responsibility, more coaching and support. It allows a lot of folks who maybe for life reasons or other reasons just weren't able to finish college or just weren't able to get their credential. So now they're getting that for free and they're getting compensation so they can support their families. And it opens up a completely different set of folks who might enter the profession. And then certainly the thing that we don't actually talk as much about is that national occupation credential. Being part of an apprenticeship program opens up significantly more opportunities that I think a lot of folks just don't know about. In one case, we had a woman and her car broke down. And for every one of us, that might just be a really bad day and a super expensive day. But because she was in this program, being an apprentice afforded her opportunities where Uber was covered, her car replacement was covered, and it paid for childcare because she got to be part of all of the benefits of being a federal apprentice. And so we really want to share a lot of those opportunities. And what a wonderful way for teachers to get additional benefit. We talk about wanting to do that for teachers all the time. This means I go to school for free, I get paid to do so, and I have a suite of other resources available to me. So kind of diving into one of our programs to start out, this was Clarksville Montgomery. They targeted paraprofessionals that were already in their school systems, as well as teaching as a profession, that program of study in their CTE. And that's going to be our juniors and seniors in high school. Their structure was school in the evening and then with focused course and content, and then paid as paraprofessionals during the day. And the outcome is that they have a living wage, no debt, and they're able to become teachers after 2 years. So what did this mean for them in terms of their apprenticeship program? And you'll see on the next slide that there were 80 teachers. So this actually completely eliminated their vacancy in the district because they had so many in their first and second cohort. What we've seen now that they're in kind of their third year, they have double the number of teachers who are part of their apprenticeship program than they actually have spots available. So not only is it having really well-trained teachers who understand the district culture and climate, the expectations, et cetera, but they're able to have a much broader pool to select from and make really smart decisions about who needs to be in which classroom, and also project forward for early retirements, et cetera. One of the things that I like a lot about what they're doing is that they have that mixed model with high school and paraprofessionals. They've expanded that even more, and many of our districts are starting to look at custodians, bus drivers, and I mean, very candidly, people that oftentimes get overlooked in school systems who can be excellent teachers. But again, life happens, and they might have entered into a job, have a dream of being a teacher, and are incredible. We have a number of those stories, but seeing someone who has always dreamed of being in the classroom, they are passing the same college courses as everyone else with the same grade expectations. They are passing the praxis just like everybody else with those same really high bar expectations. And they are getting 3 years of experience. To see the life-changing component of what the apprenticeship model can do and see that those future teachers are so much better prepared than we see in traditional programs, that is something that I think about when I think about impact for students. And so Clarksville Montgomery's program does that. They have the early learning teacher residency program, specifically addressing the district's needs, and then that free path that they've been offering. And they now have partnerships with 2 universities, again, trying to expand the regional impact for the entirety of Middle Tennessee, which is really exciting. And then the last 2 slides are really about kind of approach. The first is on the collaborative solution. I think one of the things that gets taken for granted is just how many people need to be part of a process if you're going to have a high bar. Because again, this isn't about diluting. This isn't about trying to get a fast pass to becoming a teacher. This is about saying we think there is a better way to have stronger teachers on day one for kids that also appropriately compensates and supports teachers in the way that they need. And so we think about who that pool is, and those are aspiring educators. It's also working with your local workforce board. In terms of where the funding comes from, you have 2 options. There's the state labor dollars. So the state can have a statewide program and start to put the labor dollars into apprentices. the governor or whoever manages that component can put aside their labor dollars specifically for teacher apprentices. And that is that sustainable long-term funding. Forevermore, grow your own programs through the apprenticeship model can pay for future teachers. You also have those local labor boards that will allow you to make those same decisions at the local level to really target specific needs that might just be for your community or district. The other components would be you have your district leaders who certainly have to identify the vacancies, recruit and retain those folks in the apprenticeship positions. It's really important that they sustain over time. You are evaluated by how long and how many or what % of folks stay in your apprenticeship model. And so you really want to make sure you have a strong selection process and it's not just come one, come all. Again, quality matters and the bar is high. Your state agency is the group that is going to help with that monitoring, quality control and approval process. And then certainly your schools and communities benefit. Again, I will just say, being an elementary school parent right now, having those additional teachers in the classroom, just think about what is possible with smaller group size, the literacy instruction that you can get in high dosage tutoring that's possible. There are absolute benefits that happen with those future teachers, not just for the teacher themselves, but for real-time students as that teacher is learning and growing. And then lastly, before I turn it back over to Jeremy, is around resources and templates. The Department of Education here in Tennessee believes two things around this topic. The first is that federal dollars are taxpayer dollars, and some states are donor states and some states are receiver states. And so whichever kind of state you are, they are still American taxpayer dollars. And so since we are using these federal relief dollars to develop our materials, we are going to make them freely available and editable. So they're open resources. So once they are completed, we will let ECS know. We will have those posted on our website. Please download them, make them better. Just tell us what you did to make them better so we can help our Tennessee kids just like you're helping yours. But there will be a playbook and workbook that walks you through every step of how to do this in your state. We'll also have a future website that's a tool. So I want to be a teacher and I am currently a blank, and it will walk the candidate through every single step, as well as additional resources and technical support that we really want to make sure we're able to provide because people move, and at the end of the day, we've got millions of kids in this country who absolutely deserve to have a fantastic teacher on day one and every single day thereafter. And we think that this model is the way that's going to do that at scale, and that actually elevates a profession that I think is one of the greatest jobs that anyone will ever have. So thank you for the time today and appreciate being on the webinar.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Schwinn. And it's great to get your take and the real-time experience that you've had there in Tennessee. We're going to open it up to some questions now, some that we've received through the survey that was sent out yesterday, and some that we received through the Q&A tool that's at the bottom of the page. Some of the questions are duplicative and some are a little bit more in the weeds. So we're going to try to get as many of these as we can, and Sarah and I will rotate back and forth. I do want to let everybody know, though, you will receive tomorrow an email from us that has information not only about how to rate how this webinar has worked for you, but also information about the slides and how to get to the recording if you want to look at this in the future, because I know we've got a few questions in the chat on that. So to start off, and Penny, I might go to you first and then you, Karen. One of the questions we received from our survey was that the materials that this person had seen about your excellent program in Tennessee and about some of the programs that Secretary Cardona has publicized focused mainly on the need for more teachers in general, with occasionally some mentions maybe about a priority given to STEM or special ed. This particular person had a question about, what is being done about the shortage of well-prepared teachers for history and civics? And in Tennessee, is there anything being done to prioritize in those fields?
Yeah, great question. And I think this is where you're going to hear me talk a lot about local control. So we looked at our statewide data, and those are the 4 core areas. When you look at ESL, science, math, and special pops, that's where we have our biggest statewide vacancies. But at the local level, many of our districts will see shortages in social studies and history, certainly. We're also seeing many of our urban districts with shortages in elementary school teachers for the first time. And so what the apprenticeship model allows for at the state level, at least, is a process or a kind of a generic template of here is what the minimum requirements are: certain number of hours with your teachers, here's your coursework, passing the praxis, technical assistance. But the content of what type of teacher you want to be is agnostic. And so those decisions are made at the school district level. So if they have all vacancies in a CTE program, for example, or in social studies or physical education, things that aren't as big of vacancies in Tennessee, but certainly might be for one district. They can do that, and there's no minimum or there is no limitation as long as it is for a traditional classroom teacher or a support teacher. So that local flexibility is critical to make sure it works for everybody.
The next question has a few different parts and mostly related to funding. So this person is wondering more about the pay for apprenticeships. Are you using federal dollars? Is this sustainable without federal relief dollars? And then a question about if there are any teacher apprenticeship funding opportunities available for non-teacher education programs. For example, community-based organizations that are engaged in early teacher pipeline building and creating pathways into teaching. Penny, maybe if you want to start with the Tennessee perspective, and then Karen, if you have additional thoughts, please add.
Yeah, so in terms of sustainability, the apprenticeship model and getting this federal designation, it was the critical lever for us to making this sustainable. And so because we see that those federal labor dollars are distributed every year unless the government makes a different decision. What we've seen is that in many states, there's a lot of reversion. And so educators are really good at scooping up dollars when they're available. And so this essentially is that sustainable model. What I will say though, is that while it can cover tuition, it can cover books, it can cover some of the other expenses, sometimes it's not enough to cover all of it. That's going to be a local decision based on how many local labor dollars your local labor boards decide to allocate or how much your state decides to allocate. You don't have to cover the full amount. In our model, we do want to cover the full amount, but that's where you can get a lot of community partners, other organizations, scholarships. And frankly, in Tennessee, what we've done is we've worked with EPPs to reduce the rate. So we've said, how much does it actually cost to become a teacher? To cost you, the EPP, how much are you charging? And let's meet somewhere in the middle. So we're trying to drive down the cost of becoming a teacher so that we can fund more sustainably. Why that is really beneficial for EPPs is they are seeing their enrollment drop for your future teachers. So if they're going to see enrollment drop, it is actually better for them to reduce their costs just a little bit to the candidate, get more people in, and then everybody wins. And so this is sustainable through those federal labor dollars, and we're really excited about that to be able to continue that process forevermore. But we couldn't have done it without those federal relief dollars as the startup funds.
Karen, anything you'd add on that around the funding?
I think Karen is having some technical issues. And so I'm happy to answer the second part of that question. I don't remember the second part because I think that was going to be her, but I'm happy to talk about, it was futures, things outside of just teaching and community organizations. So 2 things on that. We are going to start working as a state on grow your own counselors, grow your own social workers, grow your own fill in the blank, because it doesn't just have to be teachers. The profession has to be recognized as apprenticeable. And I think there's a really good opportunity, especially right now in Tennessee. We're working with the Department of Health on grow your own nurses. So that part of that, if we can contribute a little bit from ed and they contribute from the health side, they can start to fund folks going into nursing programs specifically to become school nurses. So there's lots of opportunities when you think about cross-agency collaboration at the state level. Now for our local components and some of our local nonprofits and things like that who are doing this great work, my recommendation is that, you know, unless you are actually the ed prep who is providing the certification or credentialing or certainly BA for the teachers, it's not really the same as kind of the employer EPP. You're a third rail, really important community partner. That being said, one of the really critical roles is that additional work that can happen for fundraising, certainly for compelling local labor boards to invest in this way. And you can still be part of what those apprenticeship dollars are for technical assistance, coaching and support for teachers. So putting yourself into the mix and showing how you provide a unique add value to the district, they can use apprenticeship dollars to fund you to do that really important work. And we've seen that start to happen across the state. And it's really, really good because it leads to longer term partnerships and more consistency for the entire district.
So Commissioner Schwinn, one of the next questions really looks at some of the reciprocity issues around certification and licensure for teachers. And I know we at the Education Commission of the States have been tracking a lot of this with task forces and commissions that are out there. But it's hard. I mean, we had a lot of states that through the past decade, tried to raise some of the standards for what it took to get licensed as a teacher. Some of that ended up with some good outcomes, but some of that meant when people moved to your state, it was really hard, even if they were already licensed in the state they were coming from, to get licensure there. So I know the Council on State Governments has done a lot of work around, what are some of the reciprocity arrangements? Anything that you see that you're focusing on in Tennessee, or that your work with apprenticeships has led to some of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that, specifically on apprenticeships, one of the things that we're really looking for is, as more states have those replicable models, because there is now a federal recognition of what has to be true in order to become an apprentice, it allows for a different level of reciprocity. And so we are excited about that, especially because we border 7 states, or 7 states border us, I should say. So we have a lot of that back and forth that happens across states. We've been really working at the state level to keep the high bar, but make it much easier to become a teacher. And frankly, I think because so many of us are facing shortages, there is a lot of movement to make it as easy as possible to recruit from sister states and say, look, Alabama, I'm sure you're wonderful, but come on over to Tennessee and we'll do a little bit better for you. So that competition is starting to happen, and they're doing the same to us. So having that reciprocity is going to continue to be really important. The apprenticeship model, though, allows for significant efficiency in having people be able to say, I checked the federal box, and so now you can come on over and really get the fast track there. I know Karen's probably done a lot of national research on that, so I'll kind of stop there and see if she has anything to add.
I've just managed to get back in. My apologies. I have no idea what froze on my computer. And so I've just gotten to the end of this question. Sorry, Commissioner, I'll need to hold on that one.
Karen, I'll go ahead and ask a different question. Do you see a need for mentoring teachers? Do they need some foundational requirements to co-teach with apprentice teachers?
Absolutely. And I'm sure Tennessee has tons of wonderful experience about this, as do many partners, I'm sure, that are on the call. I would say one of the most interesting places to start thinking about what mentor teachers need is thinking about how different it is to have someone in your classroom who's going to be really part and parcel of the classroom. So not a student teacher who'll come in and out doing lessons, and not a paraprofessional who's assisting in some things that are specifically designated by the teacher, but somebody who's really there as part of the classroom all day, every day. They are co-planning, they are co-teaching, they are co-assessing, they are co-reflecting on this learning inside the classroom. That mental shift for the mentor teachers themselves is something that is an important first step in thinking about what you'll want to do to support your mentor teachers. In addition, there are a lot of specific pieces that our partners have found, like, for example, what instructional coaching looks like, what it might look like to be able to sort of do adult learning principles, and some of the questions on how to have challenging conversations, to be courageous in those challenging conversations. And then, of course, co-teaching training itself, so that you actually know how to work with another person in the classroom. So all of those pieces and more are pieces that mentors might need. And one of the things that some of our partnerships have found, Sarah, that I think is really important is, if the folks who are coming into your apprenticeship do not look like the mentor teachers, there may need to be some work between the mentor teachers and the programs and the districts around. What does it look like to be sure that we understand who we are as mentor teachers coming into this space where we're going to be sharing our classroom with folks who may not come from places that we come from?
So one of the questions we're seeing that's kind of repetitive and showing up in the chat a little bit is just around some clarifications with both of you might be able to help us with. So is a bachelor's degree required in the apprenticeship program, or how does that work? Because I know there's some nuances around that.
Yeah, so in Tennessee's model, you have to have a bachelor's degree and you have to have your credential or be working towards that if you have a provisional credential before you can become your own classroom teacher. So many of our folks will have their AA degree, especially because we have Tennessee Promise, which pays for that for a lot of our students. And so they might be, you know, I have my AA and I am working in food service or a bus driver or a paraprofessional. That 2 to 3 years is so they can earn their BA and their credential before they get into the classroom. But the BA is absolutely required for every teacher in the state.
And we're working with apprenticeship programs that both are helping people pursue their BAs and that are credential only programs after the BA and that are master's programs after the BA. So any of those are eligible. The question is how the programs themselves get designed and submitted for recognition as registered apprenticeship programs.
Can you say more about the pay scale for people in apprenticeship programs, maybe starting in Tennessee with Commissioner Schwinn, and then Karen, any others that you're aware of from folks you work with?
So in Tennessee and Clarksville is kind of the inaugural model, since they had that paraprofessional model. They actually use the same salary schedule as they do with other paraprofessionals. The difference is that they've adjusted for a different salary schedule because each year you have to show a certain amount of progression in your compensation. And so there's a specialized kind of compensation structure for those who are earning their BA to become a teacher. Now, I think one of the nice things is that that can be done at the local level. It all depends on kind of what your structure is. The only requirement is that you have to earn more for each successive year that you are in the program. But for us, it's been the paraprofessional model. We also know that there are a number of districts who are looking to plan getting from paraprofessional to the teacher year one or step one, because then those first year teachers actually can start to get paid on like a step 2 or a step 3 if they're on the step and ladder scale.
Yes, and I think the only other thing that's been a consideration across our partnerships is that at minimum, an apprenticeship cannot start below a minimum wage. So your minimum wage inside your area is the absolute low bar. That said, it is the sort of going rate for that profession. And so if you think about an assistant teacher rate, that would seem to be the right going rate for the profession in terms of the pay scale.
We've got probably one last question here because of time that we'll ask of the two of you. And so this is a good question just around how do you make the call about who can participate in apprenticeship versus traditional programs? I mean, what does a selection process look like? And is there a focus on diversity of apprenticeship candidates?
I'll do the Tennessee model and then Karen, maybe you can talk about kind of what you've seen nationally. I think in Tennessee, I'll start with the diversity question. One of the things that has been most exciting in Clarksville Montgomery is the majority of the candidates are racially diverse or reflect differently than what their traditional teacher population has looked like. So that is actually something that has been one of the really strong components. And frankly, because of the population that they are recruiting from, it's really exciting to see. I also see in our other districts a very intentional selection process. One of the things that I didn't talk explicitly about earlier, but in our Grow Your Own model, we have a diverse leaders network. So essentially every district in the state can nominate at least one person and has one spot where the state will pay for that future leader to become get their administrative credential and their master's at no cost. And diversity, there's a pretty broad definition for that, of course, but what we're seeing is that it doesn't guarantee a job, but it does guarantee that the pool of folks available is more reflective of the communities we serve. And it does remove any excuses about ensuring that we have a more diverse population who is both leading in classrooms and leading in school buildings. I think for us, one of the things that continues to be incredibly important from a selection process, again, because you are rated on what your retention is within the programs, is the interview process. How serious are you about becoming a teacher? Are you just looking to not do what you're doing? Those are two very different questions, as we know, or at least answers. And then certainly looking at what the folks have been doing before, why they want to become a teacher, and then what that aptitude is towards that particular profession versus anything else. But we know that our districts do a pretty significant interview process. In Clarksville, their first cohort was who wants to show up, and let's see from there. But I think what we are really seeing is that it's a traditional interview process and really making sure that it's fitting the vacancies that are currently available.
Yes to all of those things. In addition, I think we would say that there is just the financial reality of how difficult it is to become a teacher. We've done some national research on the financial barriers to becoming a teacher. And after taking a 45-minute financial sort of survey about all of your money and your sources and your grants and your loans, people took the time to write a lot. And one of the most powerful comments, I think, was, if people were paid to become teachers, I think we wouldn't have a problem with diversity in the teaching profession. And that is definitely where our project sort of operates from. We were originally called the Sustainable Funding Project for this particular reason. And so when you have programs, whether they're intentionally designed to bring in diverse candidates or not, if they have funding, they result in a better diversity in the teaching force. So the funding itself is going to drive part of that. That said, everything that the commissioner has said about selection, about intentional recruitment from the populations that you know are connected to the kids that they're going to serve, all of those things make a profound difference, and we support them in our partnerships across the country are doing that too.
Well, thank you all for those great questions and for participating today. A special thanks to Dr. DeMoss for working through the joy of technology during this pandemic, and for Commissioner Schwinn for stepping up and being able to answer so many of those questions. We really appreciate each of you joining us, and a huge, huge applause for our presenters. It was a great privilege to feature each of you today.
Education Commission of the States is here to support you in your work. We value your feedback, and we would greatly appreciate it if you would please take a couple of minutes while the experience is fresh to share your thoughts and opinions on today's event. A link will be provided when we adjourn. Today's session was recorded and will be shared in your post-event email.
We hope to have you join us on June 8th for our next Partnering for Success, focused on evaluating state-level assessments so districts can address unfinished learning. This event will be with our partners at SAS, Missouri Commissioner of Education Margie Van Dieven, and North Carolina Senator Deanna Ballard. Registration information will be sent to you soon. If you have any additional questions or would like to network, I hope you will reach out to us at ECS. We look forward to hearing from you and seeing you at our National Forum on Education Policy. Our forum returns in person July 13th through 15th in Washington, D.C. We've placed a link in the chat to share the event details. Thank you again for joining us here today.